Thanks, Amy. Like Amy mentioned, this is our second Intacct user forum, and the R3 release occurred on August 18th. So very new. If you've noticed a few new features within your Intacct instance, I want to go through and give a high-level overview of some of those highlights, and primarily some big new features within construction. Quick want to give an overview of who we are here at Action. We're a top ERP VAR partner and have acquired multiple acquisitions throughout the past 12 years and continue to partner with those solution leaders. For our implementations, we also provide a proven lean process to execute those efficiently and effectively. We have more than 220 employees and over 6,500 customers, most recently recognized as Top 100 VARs list, and then recently this year, Top Workplace Award 2023. Within the construction and real estate division, we provide various software solutions, including Sage 100, 300, Sage Intacct, which is the user form for today, Sage Estimating, and then various other independent software vendor applications or ISV applications. All right, let's jump right into construction feature set. The most exciting piece for this release is the first phase of our vendor compliance. And for compliance management, this is the first piece that will be related specifically to vendors, and it will continuously roll out throughout the next few releases. So for this release, you'll be able to track insurance and miscellaneous compliance, all related to vendors. Those compliance records will then be linked to the vendor record. There will be an additional tab available. And then the validation of whether a vendor is non-compliant will be available when you go in to pay your bills. So there will be various messages received based on the compliance setup. And an overview of how this vendor compliance setup will work is if you go into company subscriptions, you'll need to find vendor compliance and subscribe to that part. The next is going into your permission settings, and then based on whatever users you would like to have the ability to create and update vendor compliance records, make sure to go in and set those permissions. And then the next two pieces here in this order, create the compliance definitions and then create the compliance types, which will be linked to those definitions. 3 different ways that you can generate the compliance records will be through manual entry, import, or through the API. Kind of going into explaining more how the definitions and types relate to one another. And like I mentioned, you want to start with your compliance definition, and this will store your compliance category, which at this time is either insurance or miscellaneous. There will be more categories within future releases. The parameters for which the record is non-compliant, and then the outcome if there is going to be an error message, warning, or if it's not an important compliance piece, if it's just going to simply ignore that when you go in to pay bills. So you can see some definition examples are like insurance, licenses, or certificates. And then you can have various different types of records that are associated to those definitions. So you have your general liability, workers' comp, umbrella insurance, auto insurance, licenses, any other certifications. You can link various types to that specific definition. How you can set these definitions and types up. So you can set these up either at the top level or entity-specific vendors based on your current setup and which will work best for your workflow. And this is a screenshot of what the compliance definition entry section will look like. If you go into purchasing setup, there will be a new section called vendor compliance, and that is where you can go in and add those definitions and types for the initial setup. And like anything in Intacct, you can assign an ID and then a more descriptive definition name. And then with other types of IDs, once that ID is created, you'll not be able to change that unless you go in and duplicate that definition to then change the ID. So make sure that it's something that is clear and concise of what is being described. And then again, compliance category at this time is only insurance or miscellaneous. And for insurance, it'll always validate against expiration date. If you choose miscellaneous, both options of either expiration date or when the document received will both be options for what to validate against. Generation rules, right now the only option in the track by is vendor. There's more to come in future releases. Or you can automate by type of vendor, and I'll discuss that on the next slide here. Talked about validation rules, and then the notifications. This is the initial setup of if your vendor is out of compliance, what the message will be displayed when you go into paid bills. If you choose to automate by type, if you have vendor types currently set up, you have, maybe subcontractor, supplier, whatever the type of vendor it is. When you go in to create a new vendor, this will have the associated type, which then will generate these compliance records automatically. It will not have any of the additional information linked to it, but it will have all of the set records knowing that this vendor needs all these types of insurances or these types of licenses. Your existing records right now will not update. It will be a re-import or overridden re-import process, so you'll be able to set the new vendor types and be able to then link that once you go in to create new records. Compliance type piece, same thing with the definition. There will be a type ID and then a more descriptive name. Then this is where you'll link the definition to the type. The next piece there, all of the red asterisks are required fields, so you'll want to set up your compliance record ID sequencing. You can have different numbering sequences for different compliance types if you prefer, or another option is any sort of compliance record can have the same numbering sequence, which is what I set up on the second screenshot there to have all numbering sequence in sequential order. Once you have all of your types and definitions set up, when you view that screen, it will display your type, the type name, and then it'll explain which definition is linked to that type. And then you'll be able to also see numbering sequence as well. The new tab on the actual vendor record is called Vendor Compliance. You can see it's broken out into the insurance and miscellaneous categories. And once you have those vendor records linked to the vendor, it will display the type and the actual compliance record, and that has the drill down capability to view the actual details, and then if it has been received, effective date, expiration date, and then also from this screen, that pencil is the ability to edit this record, or you can add additional records from this screen as well manually. So if you click add from the vendor record screen, it'll bring you into this record information. So this is where you'll want to enter more additional details for this. On the top screen, all you'll have to do is select your type ID, and then that will pre-fill the rest of the sections within the top column there. So you'll have the record name, and then the definition will pre-fill as well as the category, and then based on whatever vendor you're on, you'll be able to have that generated as well. Compliance details, you'll have when document was received, who was received by, various different dates, the expiration date, which is important for insurance because that's what it is validating against, any other reference numbers, the amount on that insurance, and then also this is where you can add in your attachment for that record. And then the additional information there at the bottom, that was also pre-filled once you entered the compliance type. All right, and now the validation piece. When you go into pay your bills, there is a new column down at the bottom for vendor compliance. And at this point in time, the messages are either error warning or there will simply be no message in there if you choose to ignore. This is a drill down column, so you'll be able to go in directly from this screen to view that error message. The message up at the top for the failed error because the expiration date was non-compliant, that's the error message that will be displayed if you try to pay that vendor bill when it is in a non-compliant state. So it'll say, hey, your expired insurance, make sure to go in and either update that or, figure out the best way to get rid of that message there. And when you drill down into that error message, it'll bring you directly to this screen where you then have the option to completely delete this entire vendor record, compliance record, or you can edit from this screen, update your expiration date if you have indeed received a renewed compliance record. And then if you click done and have saved your information for the new expiration date, you can then just proceed with paying the bill directly from that screen. So there's no need to go back to a different screen. That'll all be done on that screen. And then you can then go ahead and pay that bill. With reporting, since we've updated new data sources, there will in fact be reporting areas to relate to the custom report writer, as well as interactive report writer. There will be a new reporting area with those 3 objects as well. The compliance reports will be available shortly. So after the 2023 release, which again was on August 18th. So that will be posted on the community shortly within the next few weeks. At this time, printed doc templates are not supported. In the future release sometime in November, hopefully that will be a new piece to add to this compliance. A couple items that are out of scope for this release, again, they will be available in future releases. Our custom fields and smart rules and smart events are not supported at this time. And then again, the printed doc templates, like I mentioned previously, those will also not be available until future releases. More exciting things to come for the compliance management as well as other various construction pieces. Like I mentioned, printed docs, more commitment related compliance pieces will be end of this year, early next year. And then there will be additional pieces for joint checks, lien waivers, and the option to have paid when paid at some point in 2024. So lots of new enhancements to look forward to during this rollout. The overall construction roadmap, just want to give you a sneak peek at this. More reporting features in each of these, so be on the lookout for those items. More enhancements for WIP management, and then other miscellaneous enhancements as well. So in the R2 release, there was the purchasing reverse conversion for non-inventory items, and this will be available within next year for order entry reverse conversion as well. So additional enhanced time tracking and purchasing multi-document conversions are also included as some of those miscellaneous enhancements. And again, as always, more reporting feature sets to be available. All right, now let's kind of transition into some of the other modules and a few other highlights that I want to touch on here. AP vendor approval, the ability to have greater visibility into newly created vendors as well as vendors that are being edited by other personnel within your organization. So when you set up vendor approval, you'll need to go into AP settings, configuration settings, and there's a new vendor approval section to turn on vendor approval. So keep in mind, this will automatically approve any of your existing vendors. So you'll want to make sure, depending on the volume of your vendors, that maybe your vendor record is indeed cleaned up and should be approved automatically. And it may be something that needs to be done after hours, because if these vendors are in a submitted state, you will not be able to create a bill until those are fully submitted or fully approved. So just a couple things to keep in mind there before turning this on. Once you've turned that setting on, you'll need to go into your permissions, and whoever will have approval abilities, you'll need to set that person as an approver for vendors. And then once you have set this up, all of your vendors will be automatically approved, and you'll receive an email once that is complete, so you can know when to go in and continue your normal day-to-day activities. So when a vendor is submitted, it will display to whoever has the permissions in a new tab called Approved Vendors under Accounts Payable. And the screen up at the top will be an option for that approver to view the vendor record, and then they can either approve or decline, and also submit comments when they approve or decline, and kind of give feedback to why it was approved or declined in the first place. There's an approval history tab, and you can see from there whether this was a new vendor or if it was edited, and then who submitted it, what the date was, and who the approver was. And like I mentioned as well, those are the comments of any additional items that need to be addressed. Like I said, so if a vendor is in a submitted state, this is the error message that will be received if you try to generate a new bill. So once you attempt to generate this, you will need to contact the approver for vendors and have that vendor approved. Simply refresh, and then you can continue with that bill process. Another feature in AR is the payment ID number sequencing. The way to set this up is under your accounts receivable configuration. Under document sequencing, there is an additional section to set up your payments, similar to your invoices or customer document sequencers. Once you set up this new ID sequencing, you will then be able to custom sort your payment IDs when you go into your posted payment screen. So then you have the ability to track all of those payments more easily, and then refer specifically to posted payments for tracking and reconciliation purposes. Within the GL, there's now an option to restrict GL transactions to the entity level. There already was the option to restrict subledger transactions, and so now you have the ability to restrict even more with general ledger transactions. You can restrict the transactions at either the top level or entity level, but not both. So you can see once I go into the entity level, I no longer have the access to restrict to the top level only. If you do restrict to the entity level, you can still view those entity-specific transactions from the top level if you click to include private, and then this will give you a consolidated view of all of your transactions. Match tolerance for purchasing. In the configure purchasing section, there is a new setting called enable match tolerances. Once you click that checkbox, it will give you additional options for how you want to validate, if you want to select a specific GL account to post that variance to, that's an option as well. And you'll want to make sure that whatever you're validating against, it will validate against whatever is prior in the workflow for your transaction definitions. And then for the quality or quantity or price tolerance percent, it can be both price and quantity, or you can have it against either quantity or price. So that's an available option. At this point, it is only validating a percent and not a dollar amount at this point. So just keep that in mind as well when you go to validate these new transaction definitions. If there is an exception to any of these transactions, it'll now display in a state of exception. You can drill down into that, and on the left-hand side, there will be an exclamation point, and it will display the variance between what was purchased and then the quantity or price that you were invoiced for. So that's a new feature for purchasing. For reporting, there is a new formatting checkbox to exclude adjustments. And this is primarily for those of you who do not use adjustments. It just kind of clears out all of those zeros that may mean nothing to you. So just to have a better view of your report and see to exclude those adjustments and just have a cleaner view when you go into your trial balance report. Another piece just on the user interface is additional features for the beta list views. And this piece is still in beta, so if there's any additional feedback, be sure to send that to Sage prior to rolling out the new list enhancements. So you can go in and mess around with additional personalized views. Any of those custom views that you're currently creating, you can see the columns being displayed directly on that screen. You have the ability to view your vendor list while you're going through and selecting which vendor to click on. You can freeze columns, you can adjust your columns and have more visibility into filtering and saved views. How can you get some of your ideas heard? A lot of these new features are customer ideas, and the main goal for Intacct is to receive that customer feedback, and those that are then voted on and set to the top of the list, those are ones that are going to be likely implemented quicker since it is such a pressing idea from their customers. And a way that you can go in and post your own ideas is in Sage Intacct community. On the home screen, there's an option to view all ideas, and then you can post your ideas. Like I said, try to get word out and vote for that idea. If other customers are running into that same issue or think of a new enhancement that may be more efficient for construction specifically, make sure to vote for those ideas, and then Intacct software engineer team will look into developing that in a new release. Stay tuned for and keep a lookout for additional emails from marketing for our current Intacct users. We would like to roll out Intacct tips and tricks, which will be more frequent webinars, and we will touch on various items within Intacct and have additional webinars and kind of workshop sessions for all of our current customers. If you have any questions or would like to get more information, you can reach out to support@action.com or your primary consultant or sales rep. All of these new features can be viewed in the release notes on your Intacct homepage. right on the initial dashboard there, you can see there's a link to the R3 release notes. If you have any other questions or want to see other availabilities and what else is out there. So I appreciate you all taking the time out of your morning, and I hope that you all have a great rest of your day, and thanks for tuning in.